From Hong Kong, this is Mea Culpa, the Lessons Learned from Startup podcast. Based on Postmortem Conference, where founders, investors, lawyers and mentors share their stories about working on, with or for startups. I'm Jeffrey Brewer, and today we talk to Thomas Pun, an entrepreneurial technical product manager with a strong sense of UX, design and business. Started at Apple as a video codec engineer and had way too many tech advisor roles at known and lesser known startups to mention. He's a Stanford and Y-combinator alumni. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, Jeffy. Thanks for having me.
You started at Apple, but how eventually did you end up in startups?
Good question. Actually, before Apple, I've always been interested in startups. So right after my bachelor degree, I did kind of try to start something with my friends. At the time, we had no idea. I kind of still had no idea how to do this. But all my friend was, we never launched anything. We didn't know. We didn't talk to anyone. So we kind of started a few months. So technically, that was kind of my first startup. And that didn't go well. And everyone kind of had a full-time job. I went to Apple. Most of them came back to Hong Kong. And around the time that I came back, after 6-7 years at Apple, I actually came back because of family reason. So I came back. And my really good friend and also ex-colleague at Apple, he's actually non-Chinese, but he's really into Chinese and Asia culture in general. So I was like, hey, I want to move to Asia. He got bored at Apple too. And I told him, well, you can't find that many interesting engineering work. Mind you, that was like 2006. So it was like 14 years ago. So a lot has changed by now. But so I told him, hey, you know what? We worked together well. We launched something, I also call it something significant. Maybe we can try starting something. So that's kind of how we started to talk about startup more seriously. We did that. And I was following program, Hacker News, and I saw this Y-combinator thing on TechCrunch. Like anyone who's starting startup, that's the first things that they read is TechCrunch. And we apply, and we were lucky. We got in. That's kind of how it got started.
And what was the idea that you came in with at Y-combinator at that point?
So at the time, cell phones starting to get popular, iPhone. The time when we applied, I think it was 3G, iPhone 3G just came out. And they start having video recording. But it was really crappy. And like you said, I was a video codec engineer. Those things really bugs me. So when I look at like those videos, oh, this is so ugly, we can fix this, we can make this, do this and that. So we thought, oh, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll build a service to help company process their mobile video. And, because we also does a lot of the pipeline, so video processing pipeline. So we basically built, for now, we'll probably describe mobile video processing as a service. Again, at that time, SaaS wasn't even a thing. So that was the idea that we submitted.
Okay, and you got in?
We got in, yes.
It sounds more like that was accidental.
I wasn't expected it. It was my second time applying. First time, I applied with some friends that I met in Hong Kong. Random people, didn't even get a call or anything. So second time around, I applied with someone. Not later, I find out, they really like this combo, like a tag team. Tag team people that have built something together. So we were lucky we got in. So I didn't really have much expectation I was going to do it anyways. So that's why I felt like it was... to be honest, I felt we were really lucky because we didn't have startup experience. I didn't really know much about it. Even my co-founder didn't even know what Y-combinator was at the time.
At that point, you were doing video for the mobile, the iPhone. But what was the actual sellable idea that you sold to Y-combinator as the product that you were going to roll out?
Right. So at the time, the only way you can actually upload a video on the iPhone was through email. I don't know how many of your listeners actually remember way back. But back then, you can't do background upload, you can't do a lot of these things. And email was kind of the only thing that kind of be done in background. So we actually built an email service that allow basically a third party, actually consumer too. We didn't know about this to C to B thing. So we kind of built this, oh, you know what? My mom can use it. This company can use it. So our positioning wasn't great. But ultimately what it does is we actually let you compose an email address. So you can turn a video to black and white, fix the anti-shake, you want to add a title, and kind of like make it an email address and send that video to that email address. And when it's done processing, it will email you back that video.
So almost like outsourcing editing for video automated.
I would like to call that was like Instagram before Instagram.
I think you missed out there on something there.
It was way too early.
You went to YC. How did that startup end it?
So after we got in, we're like, okay, wow, this is it. We're very excited. First of all, the first thing I really remember Paul saying at the beginning of the first kind of gathering was like, well, at the end of this program, you're probably not going to see some of your batchmates here. I was like, why? It's like, you got in, this is a good thing. Why would you not want to finish it? And it did. So some people actually disappear, like they quit kind of in between. But after the first week, we have office hour and PG say, I don't like your idea. Have you find any customer? Anyone want to pay for this? I'm like, why do we need to find someone who want to pay for this? We just build this and they'll come, right? We haven't built this yet. So we tried, and that was the time we actually start to talk to customer. We did a couple company, and that was one of the awesome thing about YC is that there's within the ecosystem and the alumni network, there were kind of enough companies in there that would probably use the service, whatever you're building. So we were able to like reach out to those people, and they said, well, actually, you know what? I don't need this, but can you actually help us transcode the video? I have this video, I want it into different sizes and bitrate. And I'm like, okay, well, that was exactly what we did back in Apple because we were doing the iTunes video store. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. It's like, I don't want to do that again. That's what I did at Apple. It's like, I'm doing startup, I want to do something different. One of the mistakes I think I made. But long story short, because of that, we actually didn't launch the service that we got in. And in fact, after that week, we go through different ideas like every week. So there's a weekly dinner. Every week, we have an idea. We did something to it. Either we talk to user and we show people around within that week or during the office hour. So we were doing like 3-4 ideas until probably a month in. And that was when we kind of have like 2 ideas and we kind of started and we decided on one that we launched, the Now Move one, Twitter TV idea.
Did you, because when you applied, you had, of course, like the hope that you got in, but did you prepare yourself at that point for saying like, hey, like we're going to do this for like 5 months, 6 months, or we have a certain runway in mind, or you just go for it and see where it lands?
Honestly, absolutely, I had no idea at the time. I already quit my job at the time, so it wasn't opportunity cost doesn't seem like huge. And that was a time when YC only gave out like 20K. So we were basically eating into the savings. So we basically raised right after within the batch. And the good thing was, my wife at the time, my wife back then was my wife. She was working, so we had some support, which is one of the advice. I think actually getting married is actually something that's not intuitive, but that actually helps. Having someone put bread on the table.
What was her thing? Like, she's also Asian, right?
She's Asian, yes.
Yes, and Asian quite often have, especially Asian wives, have a little bit different understanding of the family structure, and that at that point the man of the house usually should bring in the major chunk of the household income. What was her perspective on that? Like, was he really supportive of that, or she just thought it was just a phase for you, or like what was her reaction on that?
She was super supportive. She's still very supportive right now. She never stopped supporting me. Even at this time, back then our burn rate are much lower. Now we have kids and more kind of family commitment. She didn't really give me any pressure at all. And in fact, she was the one a lot of times encouraging me because she felt like, well, you should be doing this. We know like you want to do this. She doesn't want me to make the decision solely because I do always have to bring, get the end meets per se. We have a little bit of runway, so we don't know when we get close to that what will change. So we'll see.
So then at that point, you graduated from YC. You said you raised some money.
Yes.
What was next on that on that journey then?
So we raised some money. We launched a product. I came from Apple, and again, I didn't know much about startup at all. And I thought, well, you build a product and people will come. I had no idea how to think about retention, acquisition, and all that. So we launched this thing. So I said, hey, it wasn't working. It wasn't like what we expected. We thought, like you go TechCrunch and, boom, that's it, right? And the thing is, we have some really awesome investors. And in fact, one of them is actually a celebrity. And once in a while, he tweeted our service. And then boom, we got a lot of traffic. And we couldn't even handle the traffic. We were like, oh man, it's like it fell again. We got all this complaint and we have to fix them. So it's not like they can like continuously do this for us. So we did that for almost a year. We made probably like 4 or 5 iteration. Investor was, lining up with talking to a lot of people, getting presented, getting a conference, all that. But nothing really sticks. It was just like, it doesn't feel like it's working. In the hindsight, I think we were not executing it well enough, I think, really. And then we kind of saw something shiny and say, oh, wow, maybe this isn't working. Let's go do that. So we built another product that's iPad only. That also, it's very nicely designed. It works really well. And we got featured on the iTunes store, all that. And, we actually got even more people tweeting about us. And but nothing, like when you look at the data, retention was really bad. The number of users aren't really growing crazy. We do have a really core user, like core-based user. People that mentions like, oh, I have this for like 5 hours on, they leave this on and they kind of do work. And that was where we started to have the last idea, kind of my startup. It's like, well, maybe this consumer thing isn't our thing. Like I can't do consumer. So we end up building a 2B product and try to help, product manager to understand how people use the app. And it was a pain point at the time because we couldn't talk to this user because they were all in Russia, in mid-US, and in Southeast Asia. And those are not in San Francisco, not in New York, where our investors are, where we are. Well, I'm like, okay, how are we going to reach those people? That's why we kind of start building that tool. And we built that tool. We have some paying customer. That was also the first time we start charging. And again, that also opened up another can of worms. Like, how do you price your product? So we learned a lot from there. At the end of it, we got a soft landing, meaning that we ran out of money and we wanted to get a badge of honor. And we were lucky that we were actually able to get something. We got acquired. Officially, we got acquired. And that was it. It was like after almost 4 years.
What was from that journey together with Y-combinator, the biggest key takeaway that you learned from that?
There's so many. I think the biggest, and I think that kind of left the most impact on me, was most successful founders are just like you and me. I think anyone can do it. It's really like, are you passionate enough to do it? Does it really bug you enough that you want to do this? Do you kind of feel like there's a mission that you want to do it? Do you feel like this is a very, lucrative business that you think you want to do it? The crazy kind of founders, they probably have something very unique, but I think most kind of successful startup founder, business founder, they're just like normal people.
From that time, for instance, at Y-combinator, you got a lot of advice. You got a lot of mentors, people that you have office hours with and that kind of thing. Like, which mentor still stands by you the most in the sense of in your memory saying like, oh, that person, that mentor like really struck some inner feelings for me because what he said or what she said or what she did or something else like that. Was there anybody there that you really...
There are a few. Programs, so PG was good, he taught me like no sugar coding, focus. We had a lot of co-founder issues towards the end. And he was, if you don't really know him, if you're kind of not looking at it in an objective way, it's like, oh, he's so cold and, he doesn't care. But now, even at the times, like I actually felt relief, and I talked to him. He was the first one to know that I'm thinking of breaking up my co-founders. And he was like, okay, so what are you going to do next, right? Get your paperwork done, right? If you need help, talk to whoever for your paperwork. But what are you going to do next, right? So just move on. And also say how you kind of put the message over to investor. You give me comment on how to structure investor update, all that. Second person, I'll say Ashton Kutcher. So he was our investor, and he was really helping me because his media background. He opened a lot of doors for us. He was also very supportive. He would invite us over to his office and kind of start brainstorming, kind of help us. And throughout all this, there was never a moment that I felt like they were giving up on us. That was very important. I think, even though very clearly we're not doing that great, but they always responsive and always help out. And three other person I would like to thank. There are two David Lee on my investor list, both are ex-Google. But one of them was SV Angel, so they help out a lot of the soft landing side. The other one is also helping out a lot on the media side and just, someone I don't mind hanging out with. And we still kind of chat, once in a while we'll kind of see how each other doing. And when I had kind of career thing, I don't know about next step and stuff, I'll talk to him. And the last one was my batchmate, Justin. He was much younger than me. He's basically sold his company before he finished high school. Actually, he dropped out of high school. So by the time it was like YC, he's done like 3-4 startups. He kind of like the person that I want to be for other people is he would just get to the point, and he supportive. He kind of gave me a different perspective because, when you hear from a peer versus you hear from investor, very different.
Just for the listeners, PJ is of course Paul Graham.
Paul Graham, yes.
Yes.
Founder of YC.
So at that point when you found out that like after 4 years, what I get from it wasn't really going anywhere, what were your next step? Because at that point you knew a little bit more about how to run a startup. You knew a little bit more about the no bullshit kind of culture. How was it to say goodbye to that after 4 years that you worked so very hard on?
I guess I was kind of getting used to it because during our time, we officially launched 3 products that are relatively different products. So every time we kind of say bye to the previous one. So towards the end, the reason why I kind of stopped doing what I was doing was because I knew that this business is not going to work long term. I was proven wrong. I was actually proven wrong that the company that's successful continue doing it. And the reason why I felt that way was because what we did was, again, way back in iOS where there's not a lot of support, we actually, I wouldn't say hacked, but we really took advantage of some language feature to allow us to do what we do. And what we did was we do a one-line code change and allows you to capture interaction. And we also even have all this privacy thing built in. If it's a password field, it won't get recorded. We won't record the keyboard stroke and a lot of those things. But every iOS releases, whenever they have a new release, most of the apps will crash because we have holes that we have to patch and all that. So we just feel like, okay, well, this is probably only, to a point where we couldn't patch all these holes. What I should have done was, we really try to grow it bigger, faster, and see if we can let that go, instead of, try to let it go in a dying state. So anyway, so it was actually okay. It was okay. It was a relief. I think it was my first startup. It was very stressful. I experienced things I never experienced before. I thought I've gone through a lot, but startup is a different kind of stress. And it was good. It was like, okay, you have some culture, and I feel like I'm ready to explore and do other things.
At that point, what were you going to do? Like what did you do?
What did I do?
And how long did it take for you to figure that one out?
I was lucky. When I got back to Hong Kong, I got connected to, a lot of people because of, the YC and the Apple, the Bay Area. That was when like Hong Kong was starting to do startups. So I got connected to some investor and they want to start a new fund. So I was actually helping out as kind of a venture partner. And because I don't know exactly what I want to do and they don't want to commit full time, so we were actually doing kind of venture partner part-time. So it works out well. for a couple of months. And then I kind of continue to help him out on his other funds in different capacity. So that took, I don't know, I think a few months before I kind of, okay, well, maybe I'll try this investing thing again. And at the time, I started doing advisory as well. I started my first advisory when I was in YC, advising a company that actually do video transcoding services. And they were very successful. And they came back at it and they're building another company that is doing really well. Also doing the same thing, basically video. So yeah, so that's how, when I had that advisory, I came back, I started to spend my time working with some other companies, kind of expand my network and, learn from these founders as well.
And then from that advisory, you started another company again, Double.
Double, yes.
That's probably before that I first met you. That was probably before Double already. But can you tell a little bit more about Double and why you started it and how you started it?
So after I was doing this venture fund VC thing, and after a while, I felt like, I don't know if this is something I want to do full time. And in order for me to continue to do this, I do actually need to be more, I need to be in China more. I basically need to station there. And at the time, because we relocated, I was in Hong Kong. I went to school in Vancouver, did work in Bay Area, and then I came back to Hong Kong. I don't want to move again too quickly. So I decided not to pursue that, and I end up exploring. And also because I start talking to startup again, I got, I have this bug, I was like, okay, maybe I should do this again. So I did, and I started something locally, and that was the first time. It's the first startup I started locally with local team, everything kind of local. So Double was actually the second product of that company. So there was actually one more product before that. It's called Loop House. And that was actually doing iBeacon solution. iBeacon solution actually for shopping mall, because I thought, hey, in Hong Kong, there are a lot of shopping mall. There are a lot of things, they probably want some interesting solutions. Again, I felt like that was a bit too early, because now I actually start getting call regarding that. But that was like way back. We're not doing that anymore. But so the iBeacon thing, again, another lesson is I was building this because the technology was cool, but I actually I wasn't a user. I don't know immediately someone that was a user. So we're building a lot of stuff without really having someone using it. But this time around, I stopped it much earlier. So I think I stopped it around like 9 months time. And then we start building Double. And when we're doing Double, it's because I had kid. While I was doing this startup, and there was just a lot of errands and things that I don't want to do. My wife was my double before we had kids. So because she had kids, she can't be my double, and I need to find someone else. So we kind of start doing it. And I talked to a lot more users, find out, hey, you know what? This is something people are not going to say no to. So we kind of started that.
Can you tell a little bit more about the product of Double?
Is a personal assistant. I'll say it's an executive assistant for SME, on-demand executive assistant for SME. So the way it works is, at the time, the first version is we expect everyone to be on Slack, but we're basically building that talk to your Slack. We have a dashboard, and I think the interesting thing is you're really talking to a double. You're actually not talking and not assigned to a particular person. So we try to do this thing where anyone can come in and pick up your task if they need it. We can rotate. Everyone only need to remember Double. You don't have to remember anything else. So we kind of did that. We also charged money for it, and I think we were actually unit positive.
Why didn't that work?
Great question. I think I looked at it, and there are two reasons. Number one, at the time, my co-founder didn't want to do it anymore because of family reason. He has to go back to Vancouver. So I respect that. And he was actually doing a lot of the ops and business side of things. I was running product engineering. And that was also because of Double, I realized that there were certain things that I'm not good at and I don't enjoy doing. And one of those are really ops. I don't like to work on things that are what I call undeterministic. Because in order for it takes a very different skill set to ensure all these people or agents actually deliver the first service that you want. For me, my ideal double would be someone that is almost like, chief of staff type, but not just like a PA or, a secretary type of thing. So these people are actually really hard to find. And these people usually, the funny thing is, it actually doesn't matter how much we pay these people, right? We actually couldn't get that level of sophistication, right? And because if they actually can demand that, they have a much better career path elsewhere. So they're not going to come and do what we do because they're not making a name, they're not attaching to their boss, right? You cannot promote along with your boss, like a lot of other organizations. So I think the business model things just doesn't quite work. And I just feel like I just feel like this is not something I'm best equipped to do. So at the time I stopped. So we actually have quite a bit of money left at the time. But we stopped and I was like thinking what I do. And at the end, I couldn't think of something. I don't want to rush it. So I end up kind of return the money.
To the investors?
Yeah.
You were a solo founder on that one, right?
No, I got started, P-team, P-product. I raised a little bit of money. Big mistake again. I wouldn't do that again. And then I found a co-founder. The first co-founder didn't work out. And then the second co-founder, we started to build something in business size, and we have more clear things that I don't touch and he touch. And so we're actually working pretty well, relationship-wise. Just he can't do it. He can't spend too much time on it. And the biggest kind of lesson learned was we have very different expectation on what this startup really means. I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to have to make it because I've been trying to do this. I failed so many times. I really need a small win per se. To him, who's actually very successful, he retired basically. He doesn't really need to do this. So the different level kind of expectations and how hungry you are. So that kind of, I wouldn't say create friction, but it's just, hey, I want to go head down really crazy on this. But he was like, okay, well, it's okay. If it doesn't work, then. So I wasn't mentally kind of position myself to kind of push that startup forward.
You said you raised money pre-team, pre-product. You said that was a mistake. Was it a mistake for you, for the investors, for the team, for the product?
Mistake was for me. I think because the money kind of came easy, and I didn't have a plan at the time, and I was rushing it. So I was like, okay, we got this. We're gonna have to do this, and we kind of have some directions where we don't know exactly what to do. It's almost like, oh, you have a team here, then let's start build something. Because a team here, there's a pressure that you have to give them work, right? I think a mistake is how I treated this opportunity. I'm not saying that this is something that people shouldn't do, but it was mistake on my side that I didn't handle it well. Like it was, to be honest, like, hey, P-team, P-product, you get some funding, you have runway, and you can think about this and take things, there's no so-called no pressure in sense. But I kind of screwed it up.
There are probably a lot of listeners right now thinking like pre-product, pre-team, raising money. I want that too. Like, how did you do that? What was the leverage that you had to be able to raise pre-team, pre-product? Was it your sparkling personality? Was it your previous experience? Was it your personal network? Was it your best friend just said like, hey, here is some money, do something, go play around? Or
I definitely contribute to most because of kind of the brand name, YC, Apple, Bay Area people coming to Asia. At the time, I'm always kind of the one that has like a lot of ideas, and I think I work well in the investor world. Like I in a sense, I talk their language, I'll inspire them or they inspire me, and we're kind of on the same wavelength. So it's always very easy to kind of get connected and build trust and build relationship with investor. And that particular investor, I kind of knew him. He actually not an investor in my YC company, but he was also very aggressive, kind of starting to build a name for himself. So he took a chance on me, and I think he's very successful right now with his fund and stuff. So good for him.
So at that point, there were some co-founder issues.
Yes.
Quite often spoken on this podcast are co-founder issues. How do you handle like onboarding a co-founder? How do you do that with like, I don't know, a co-founder agreement? How do you split equity? Do you have something like standard that you have for yourself? Like, hey, if I onboard a co-founder, then at least these and these and these things should be in place before they even start touching anything at the company, or what?
I think the logistics side of things. I think logistics sides are very self-contained, right? There's only like a list of things you have to do. The equity agreement, vesting schedule, all those are relatively easy. Just basically standard. Any kind of startup founder you work with, or even they probably have available document kind of sample available online right now that anyone can use. So we definitely want to do that, vesting schedule, all that.
Do you have something like standard investing schedule, like 1 or 4, or what?
Okay. So I used to do 4 years standard vesting, so 1 year clip and monthly. I start recommending it and to my own startup and also company that I advise, we're going to do 5 years back-weighted. And we changed the, basically, not the vesting schedule, but we changed the term where we actually allow the employee to actually hold on to their options much longer than normally would after they leave the company. So the reason why 5 years, because it actually take longer time now, I actually think, to make a really big impact. Is back-weighted is allow you to give more equity to your team without the risk. Right, so if at the beginning they were not really doing well, it was actually smaller portion. But if they're really contributing, and if you expect a normal team, first year in startup versus like the third year, the 4th years, they probably would be doing things that are a lot more significant, right? So the equity kind of worked that way. And having it, normally is probably 30 days to 90 days, the employee have to exercise them. For me, I feel like all the alumni are still kind of contributing it because, they may go somewhere else, they recommend our place, I'll do DD with them. So I want everyone that ever kind of touch and go through the door continue to help the company. And this is why I really like the fact that, we changed the last day. So it's valid 5 years, basically. It depends. It's like 4 years, 5 years, just don't do it in months, right? So that when someone have to leave, for whatever reason, they still hold on to, they're still entitled to that option. It's also like, if you think about it, hey, the option is granted because of the past performance, right? It's kind of like, why are you taking them away when they leave, right? If you have to use that as a golden handcuff to them, you may be hiring the wrong person.
And what's your opinion between the difference between vesting and reverse vesting? Like, did you work?
What is reverse vesting?
You don't know what the reverse vesting is? Then basically what happens is, as of the bat, somebody gets a percentage, but if they leave before a certain date, they have to give back equity.
Oh, okay. Why?
Because at that point, everybody is already, it's a way to do it. Let's put it that way. But then, for instance, if you are co-founders, then at that point in voting rights, 2 founders or 3 founders, 4 founders, they already have all the shares. Unless they would leave before their reverse vesting time and before their cliff time, then at that point, they will have to hand it back.
I know sometimes you have to do it because of the company structure, because you don't have this option thing for a certain, I forgot, was that Hong Kong or some other country? But I think vesting makes sense. It's almost you serve your time and this is what you get. So to answer your question, I'll probably say vesting just because it's much less paperwork, because usually very stressful if someone leaving or you had to let someone go. If you're doing this is almost, hey, you know what, you remember I gave you this? Say I'm taking it back. It's not gonna make the conversation any smoother.
Talking about letting somebody go, like, when was the first time you had to fire somebody and how did that go?
I don't like to use that name fire. We let someone go, we hired them out basically 1 or 2 months after IC, and he was our 3rd co-founder. And the 3rd co-founder, we brought him on board while we were in YC. So me and my partner got in, and we have never done anything web. So we said, we need someone. And so let's find a co-founder, and someone recommended it. And so, okay, it seems okay, and we brought him on, right? He was a founder. He built other stuff. So he's a talented. It's just there's the energy kind of we didn't work as well. And we were inexperienced, right? This is another thing I learned is a lot of these are both sided, right? And I definitely didn't handle this well. The Justin guy, the little kid, he had been telling me, you need to let that person go. You need to let that person go. Because I've been complaining. I've been talking about the situation. I didn't want to do it. And I finally did. And I told him, I said, wow, lucky that you didn't get sued. Because I didn't do it right. It was just one morning, hey, it didn't work out. I'm going to have to go. Here's the paperwork. Really bad. I apologized afterwards. Oh, he was a good friend. And he's very successful. He's doing other thing. Good for him. That was the first one. In fact, I'm not proud of this, but I actually let go of all my co-founders for every startup that I did. For all the co-founders that I had.
What does that say about you?
It's probably me. It definitely, I think it was me, and it was, I think doing startup and I think growing up in general is self-reflection, right? And what your blind spots are, and I know what people that I would enjoy working with. I know how I can set it up so that I don't get disappointed and then kind of start the issues doubts and worry kind of start to come start to grow, right, in the relationship. I also kind of learned that co-founder relationship is just like any relationship. It needs nurturing. It needs, it's not just work. So a lot of this, I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic, but I'm when I'm all in kind of thing. I jump in head down and expect the other person to do so. And sometimes what happens is I may attract people that are not as crazy or as, energetic, so-called, as me. So that's why you always kind of have this gap. And sometimes, they do good work, right? It's just my expectation is just didn't work out. And I have a lot to... I took a lot of responsibility for that. I think to start with, a lot of them shouldn't even be my co-founder. Second, I should have handled the situation better. I think I definitely learned and do it a much better way.
You've been an advisor in many companies. Is there, in hindsight now, that at one point you gave some advice, but now in hindsight you think, I shouldn't have given that, and I'm sorry about that? Just in... Quick response.
Great question. Quick response. Quick question. I don't think I did. And the reason why is I actually braced myself. Everyone I work with at the beginning, I was like, well, I love to work with you, but the first advice, right, I'll say is don't listen to me. I'll say, I'm here to give you a different perspective. I'm here to be a sounding board. I'm here to kind of think through this logically. I'm here to kind of support you emotionally as well. So I try to kind of set that up. So every time I say something, I usually try to frame it into perspective and data point.
And what's something that's not a secret, but most people don't know about you?
A lot. I did not get on the stage when we were having doing YC demo day. So it wasn't me. It was my co-founder. But I actually did all the fundraising and all the other talk. The reason why I wasn't on the stage was because he was a native speaker and I wasn't. So, I ended up saying, okay, well, maybe it's better that way. So I actually never stood on, and at the time it wasn't even both of us got on. I was never on the stage.
If at that point, and if something from this talk you really want to drive home for the audience, what would that be? What would be the thing that you really want people to take away from this talk? Startups
are hard, but I think I feel it's worth it. But don't do a startup for the wrong reason. Because if you just want to start a side business or whatever, you don't have to do a startup, right? You can always do a side business.
I want to thank you for your valuable insights and sharing your lessons learned in startups. For the listeners, although the rating system of podcasts is hideous, If you like this Mea Culpa series, you can rate this podcast with 5 stars as a motivation for the makers. I want to thank Mizuho Crowdbrain in Hong Kong for being the venue sponsor for this episode, and also thanks to Copy Ventures for making this series possible. This is Jeffrey Brewer. Go out and build something meaningful.